Well, good evening, brethren, and welcome to this second edition of Enlightenment Live. I'm John McGregor, a member of the Berkshire Learning and Development Committee, and I'll be responsible for the production of the webinar this evening. Before we start, let's deal with the usual housekeeping arrangements first. So, IT matters. If you have any IT issues with the Zoom, as normal, we find that if you log off and log back on using your original invitation, then that seems to sort most of the issues. As it's a webinar, attendees won't be on camera and your microphones will be muted. Please use the chat function of Zoom to highlight any technical problems or to send messages to other attendees or panelists. But please don't put any questions for the panelists in the chat function. We would much rather you use the Q&A function. The use of the Q&A function, you can use it anonymously to post the question, or you can use your own name if you wish. This would help with post-event. If we don't get around to all of the questions, we can get to your question after the event and follow up with you. However, feel free to remain anonymous if you wish to do so. And usual reminder that the webinar has been recorded this evening, and the recording will be made available in the next few days. The duration of this webinar will be around about 50 minutes. And finally, brethren, our webinars are safe spaces. So what's that, I hear you shout? What's a safe space? In relation to this webinar, we maintain a judgment-free space where we commit to consistently provide each other with a supportive and respectful environment. We therefore encourage conversation and debate between members, and of course your questions, but we expect everyone concerned to be courteous, tolerant, and respectful. With this judgment-free space now established, I'm delighted to hand you over to the capable hands of our host for this evening, Simon Oliver.
Well, good evening, brethren. On behalf of the Berkshire Lodge of Enlightenment, let me welcome you to this, our second edition of our bi-monthly online magazine programme, Enlightenment Live. As you heard, my name is Simon Oliver, and I was the first master of the lodge, which was set up in 2017 to serve you, Berkshire Freemasons, by stimulating and, we hope, satisfying your curiosity about Freemasonry. I am also the past chairman of the Learning and Development Committee. We are, if you like, an education lodge aimed at answering the question why rather than how. For those of you who may be new to Enlightenment Lodge, Enlightenment Live, at our physical lodge meetings, as you might expect, we deal with many Masonic topics. Not so much those topics relating to how we do things like ritual, but rather why. Why we are the way we are, why we do the things that we do. So this involves looking at our beliefs and values, our history and organisation, the symbolism and the meaning embedded in our ritual and ceremonies. In this way, we aim to help everybody make a daily advancement in Masonic knowledge so that everyone has an enriched experience of being a Freemason. As a physical lodge, we normally meet about 4 times a year, twice in Sindlesham, but perhaps more importantly, twice in other centres around the province, because we are peripatetic in that respect. Our meetings are mostly open to all brethren, even the newest entered apprentice, and the members of the lodges in the centre that we visit are especially welcome to attend and join in. The meetings are a real, proper lodge, but are conducted with a lightness of touch and good humour, which reflects the importance we place on setting the right, relaxed tone for learning. We create an environment of discussion and debate in which there are no silly or foolish questions, and in which everyone is treated with respect. And as you've heard, the same principles apply in these Enlightenment Live sessions. There are no silly questions. Each of our meetings in the lodge includes a presentation or demonstration and a discussion on a Masonic topic or topics, because we don't actually work formal degrees. And that means we have plenty of times for questions and discussions, which continue at the festive board. Although we don't work formal degrees insofar as we don't have candidates, what we do have is, for example, demonstrating the shortened version of the initiation ceremony. But that's accompanied by a running commentary explaining what is going on. Again, a good example of explaining what we do and adding meaning to the ceremony and enhancing our understanding. We're now adding to that lodge experience by this online presence to extend our programme and to make it easier to reach a wider audience. I'm sure that even when we get back to physical meetings, and I know some of us have already, we can still get together as we are this evening. And that means that we will continue to offer this Enlightenment Life magazine, but we will evolve and improve as we go along. Each magazine has 4 or 5 short items, which cover a range of different topics. They're presented by different speakers. As John's already said, we aim to finish at about 40 to 45 minutes and leave some time for questions and discussions. Some items are topical and others be part of a similar series of items that have gone on as a thread. And for example, this evening we have 4 items. In the first session, Ken Wotton is going to present, who presented the 2 characters, Fred and Charlie from Solomon in the first programme. They're a written format, which were used by Solomon to develop explanations. But in tonight, we have our own feature called Talks with an Elder Brother. This, we will see a live question and answer session between a new and an experienced Freemason. The second item is the second in the series of what we call History of Berkshire Freemasonry in 42 items. If you've heard the Radio 4 series, History of the World in 100 Objects, you'll get the idea in that Neil MacGregor, who was then director of the British Museum, spun a story around a gem of the collection. Now, we've taken a bit of a liberty and we've extended the definition of object to include both lodges, Masonic centres, and even interesting Berkshire Freemasons. The third item is another in our series in what we call In the Chair. And we're honoured this evening to have Worshipful Brother Ian Hopgood, the Grand Superintendent for the Royal Arch, with us. And he's going to be answering questions on his aunt, amongst other people and matters. After something from Solomon, an item which will produce some useful information for you, we hope, there'll be time for questions and answers before I move on to this month's conundrum. We set a master's conundrum each month or each session, and when correctly solved, there is a prize. Now, this year we've got 2 conundra, because nobody actually solved the last conundrum. And each conundrum will win a £25 book or value choice of books. So well worth taking part, brethren. Now, if you have any questions or any topic for any speaker, please use the question and answer facility at the bottom or maybe top of your facility. In mine, it's at the top, but yours might be at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You'll be pleased to know we have a number of skilled and highly trained operatives in Abingdon who are waiting breathlessly for your questions, and we'll return to those questions towards the end of the session. As our first item this evening, we feature what will become a regular part of our online magazine, Talks with an Elder Brother. This is where an experienced Mason explains the meaning of Masonic words and concepts to a newly entered apprentice or younger, newer Mason. Tonight, Dean Reed, an entered apprentice, discusses the meaning of speculation with John Avery. John is a Mason with over 50 years experience in the craft. He's been involved in Masonic education for more than 20 years and was provincial orator for 7 of them. We wanted to call it Talks with an Older Man, but he didn't like that idea. And with that, I hand you over to Dean.
Good evening, John. When I was initiated and first heard the presentation of the working tools, I learned that we don't meet as an operative or working stonemasons, but as free and accepted or speculative Freemasons. Later, I was informed that Masonry is a speculative science. What does that mean? What is speculation, and how should I do it?
Good evening, Dean. That's a great question. The dictionary definition of speculation is engaging in or expressing understanding based on conjecture and not solid knowledge. However, applying speculation to the understanding of our ritual can be thought as more like thinking, what does the ritual mean to me, and how should I apply it in my Masonic life?
But does this mean there is no firm basis for the meaning assigned to our symbolism?
Yes, I can understand why you might think this. But for example, take the meaning assigned in our ritual to the Masonic square, where in various places in the ritual it's described as meaning to teach morality, to regulate our actions according to the Masonic line and rule, to inculcate the purest principles of piety and virtue, to be the guide of all your actions. So there's not just one, but several meanings depending on the context in which it's featured.
I really wasn't aware of all these different interpretations. Perhaps the references are taken from parts of the ritual that I have yet to experience.
Yes, that is possibly true. At least one reference is taken from the installation of a master. But it does demonstrate that interpretation of our symbolism isn't fixed, but somewhat fluid, according to the needs of the individual Mason and the degree of advancement he's attained.
Okay, but how do I actually apply the concept of speculation to our symbolism? And why is it called a speculative science?
Okay, let's start with why Freemasonry is called a speculative science. Science is defined as the systematic organization of any body of knowledge gained by observation or experiment. This was expanded by Einstein to include thought experiments, which is precisely what Masonic speculation is. In order to answer the question, what does this mean to me? A speculative Mason must first think of a parallel in his own life that the particular tool or symbol might, and I emphasize the word might, represent. It doesn't matter if no one else has ever imagined this connection before, because the meaning of all our symbols should be very personal to you. Then, whenever the symbol, be it a working tool or a spiritual concept, is encountered in life or in a Masonic ceremony, the meaning will be personal and significant to you.
Okay, but how would I actually do that?
Yes, this isn't easy to explain, so perhaps an example would help. The best example I could find comes from the working tools of the third degree, the pencil. The ritual says the pencil is used by the skillful artist to produce a drawing or plan to assist with the building. It then goes on to explain that symbolically, the pencil should teach us that our words and actions are observed and recorded by God, and that we'll eventually be required to count for them. This is neat and tidy, but as the ritual reminds us, the main purpose of Masonry is to assist us in the understanding of ourself. I've never thought this explanation was particularly helpful with this task. So let me explain how I applied the speculative process to this tool to make it more meaningful to me. The dictionary, once again, defines the pencil as an instrument for writing or drawing consisting of a thin rod of graphite enclosed in a wooden cylinder. However, if we look at the pencil with the eyes of a speculative Mason, we need to see much more. For example, in common with mankind, the pencil comes in various colors, such as those traditionally assigned to the various ethnic races. The material of its outer casing, like that from which we are also made, is a complex living structure of hydrocarbons, that is, wood. If put under too much pressure, a pencil will bend and ultimately snap, just as excess physical pressure and mental strain will break the best of us. If badly treated or severely knocked, the outside of the pencil will become dented and bruised, and the lead within will become broken, and the pencil rendered useless. Just as bad treatment will break the body and spirit of every man. But what of this lead within a pencil? First, it must be said, the name is slightly misleading. The lead in a regular pencil is usually graphite, the crystalline form of the common element carbon. In former times, this was better known by its Latin name, derived from plumbago, or black lead, from which we get the usual name. So, being totally carbon-based, from the hydrocarbon cellular construction of the wooden outer cover to the pure carbon graphite core, the pencil replicates mankind, as we are also totally carbon-based. Are you still with me, Dean? Does this make any sense to you?
Yes, I think so. Although I've never thought along these lines before, and these days we don't use old-fashioned wooden pencils very much, but I can see that there's a definite parallel between the construction of a pencil and a human being. But what about the Masonic symbolism of the pencil?
Okay, let's continue the speculation process by considering the symbolism based on how the pencil is used. Like mankind, as children, a pencil, when first made, is not fit for its intended use. In short, it needs to be sharpened. This can be considered as analogous to our early education. With use, it again becomes blunt, and resharpening, equivalent to re-educating, is routinely required. This, like our own education, continues throughout the useful working life of a pencil. When it's been well used, after many sharpenings, it'll become worn down, too short to be very functional, and will be relegated to more minor roles. Pensioned off, so to speak, retired to a drawer, still useful in an emergency, but a little too difficult to hold and to use for long. The parallels with ourselves as we age are obvious and need no elaboration. Also, the pencil comes in various grades, such as 2H, HB, etc., with leads of varying hardness, and the selection of the correct one is necessary if the work is to be completed satisfactorily. Selecting the incorrect pencil grade or hardness will, like matching the wrong personality to a task, result in the work being spoiled. Does this make any sense to you, Dean? Can you now see how parallels can be formed in the mind based on how the description of what a pencil is and how it's used?
Yes, I can. I can see how it's possible to compare a pencil with a human being by looking at its construction and use. But how does this aid the understanding of the self?
Okay, let me try to explain. The pencil represents to me not only my brother Masons, but all of mankind, whatever their ethnic origins, religious persuasions, or character traits. It teaches me that tolerance is a necessary requirement of being a Mason, and that there are many forms of laudable Masonic activities, and all are worthy of acceptance and acknowledgement. What I'm suggesting is that gaining Masonic knowledge of ourselves by studying the working tools is not so much a task of studying the tools themselves, but an exercise in finding parallels between the material and physical form of the tool with its traditional application and the more enigmatic and hidden aspects of our own personalities. In fact, to answer the question posed earlier, what does this mean to me?
I'm a little confused, John. Does this mean that when I hear the meaning assigned to the pencil in our ritual, I should dismiss it as not being true?
No, not at all. But do understand that the definition offered is only one of many, and that each individual Mason should formulate his own meaning, consistent with his own situation and experiences in life up to that point. That's how the speculative process can help us to get into contact with and improve the understanding we have of the core of our being, often referred to as the self. That's how the pencil has become a more meaningful and significant working tool for me.
Okay, thank you, John. You've given me much to think about. I'm not sure I'd ever applied the speculative process you described to a pencil myself, but as you say, it's not important if my thoughts are not the same as yours, as long as we both derive satisfaction and benefit from engaging in the task of gaining more Masonic knowledge about ourselves. Thank you.
I'm glad you found this conversation useful. The example I gave is only one interpretation that could be constructed, and I'm sure others are possible. I offered it purely as an example of how the speculative process could be used to gain personal insight and to learn from the study of our Masonic tools and other symbols encountered on our Masonic journey to self-knowledge. Enjoy your speculating. Now, brethren, in the next edition, we'll be looking at the history and symbolic meaning attached to the poignard and addressing the important place it holds in the ceremony of initiation. So I hope you'll be able to join me here again for more talks with an elder brother. Goodbye.
John, thank you very much indeed for that. That was most entertaining and riveting. I'll never look at a pencil in the same way again. Be interesting to see what you do for biros from now on. The talks from an elder brother, as John said, will be discussed in the next series, which takes place in September. And brethren, don't forget, if you have questions, there are hundreds of people in Abingdon waiting to receive the questions and work with them to produce answers for you. We now turn to the 42 objects, if you like. We called it that because we thought 100 would be a bit too much of a stretch. We'd all get very old. So we settled on 42 to a nod to a non-Masonic hitchhiker's literary allusion. If you know it, you know it, brethren. This series was inspired because we have so many gems in the province that we really don't see and use enough. And we thought by doing this, we would bring connections, historic connections to you and make links that might be of interest. Also, we would have hidden or restricted items that we could bring to your information. Some are purely Masonic, some enable us to place Masonic objects and practices in the social and geopolitical context. That's showing where they were made or how they originated. And this evening, Ken Wootton considers a Mason who has a Berkshire Lodge named after him, but whose contribution to society and connections to this Masonic province are not as well known as they should be. And so over to you, Ken.
Thank you, Simon. Good evening, brethren. Tonight's one of 42, as Simon said, isn't so much of an object as a character. With the Olympics due to take place in Tokyo later this month, it's perhaps fitting that we look at William Henry Grenfell, Lord Desborough, who made the Olympics what they are today. Now, in 1894, Baron Pierre de Coubertin, the father of the modern Olympics, organised an international congress in Paris to propose the revival of the Olympic Games. The Prince of Wales, later Edward VII, and at that time Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England, sent Lord Ampthill as Britain's representative. Lord Ampthill was a contemporary rowing blue of Willie Grenfell at Oxford, and he went on to become Programme Master of UGLE. By unanimous vote, the Congress in Paris decided upon the revival of the Olympic Games and the formation of the International Olympic Committee, or the IOC. Now, the city chosen to celebrate the beginning of the new series was Athens in 1896. From Athens, the Games moved to France, and the IOC had determined to link the 1900 Games with the Universal Exposition in Paris. What seemed like a good idea at the time failed miserably because of a lack of organisation and information. But if the status of the Olympic Games held in Paris was low, the move across the Atlantic to St. Louis in 1904 plumbed new depths. Again, the Games were integrated with another event, which was the Louisiana Purchase World's Fair. The Games were spread over 4 months, and the athletics events were hidden away amongst other US national meetings. With the Olympic ideal in danger of being extinguished, the 1904 Congress of the International Olympic Committee passed the poison chalice of being host city in 1908 to Rome, Italy. However, in April 1906, there was a major eruption of Mount Vesuvius near Naples. The Italian authorities took this as an ideal opportunity to withdraw Rome as host city for 1908. The IOC was asked to reallocate the Games, which they did, to London. Lord Desborough was a member of the British fencing team at the Athenian Games of 1906, which took place just after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. He was approached in Athens and asked to put together an alternative bid for the 1908 Games. The 1908 Games had less than 2 years to prepare. The fact they achieved so much success in so little time was largely due to the offices of Lord Desborough. So let's have a look at Lord Desborough, the man. He was born William Henry Grenfell in London in 1855. Aged 11, he inherited Taplow Court, just outside Maidenhead, which became his home for much of the rest of his life. He attended Harrow School and excelled both academically and on the sports field. Whilst there, he set a record for the school mile that stood for over 60 years. And from Harrow, he went up to Balliol College, Oxford. At Oxford, he rode in the 1877 boat race, the infamous Dead Heat, and again he rode in 1878. He's the only person known to have been president of both the Athletic Union and the Boat Club. In 1900, he was returned to Westminster as a Conservative MP for Wickham, and in 1905, he was raised to the peerage as the first Baron Desborough of Taplow. Over the years, he filled many offices in local and national government, including being Mayor of Maidenhead on 2 occasions. Throughout his life, Willie was involved in sporting ventures. He fenced for England, twice swam the pool below Niagara, climbed the Matterhorn by various routes, rowed at Henley Royal Regatta, stroked an 8 across the Channel. They took jambars for bailers just in case so they didn't sink. And he fished for tarpon off Florida and shot big game in the Rockies, India and Africa. He was 3 times amateur punting champion of the Thames, and the medal now awarded for this prize bears an image of Lord Desborough in a punt. A few years ago, the Daily Telegraph compared Lord Desborough and C.B. Fry for the title of the greatest all-round sporting hero of the 20th century, and the newspaper declared Desborough the winner. Willie Grenfell also had a very full and active Masonic career. He was initiated into the Apollo University Lodge, number 357 in Oxford, at the age of 19, and actually on the same day as Oscar Wilde. In 1884, he became a joining member of Ellington Lodge, number 1566. Grenfell Lodge, number 3077 in Buckinghamshire, was consecrated in 1904 and named in honour of Willie Grenfell. Willie was the founding senior warden, and he paid for the cost of the lodge's warrant. Lord Desborough was appointed Junior Grand Warden of United Grand Lodge of England in 1906, and this was an office he held at the consecration of the Berkshire-based Lord Desborough Lodge in 1907. It's of note that given the slow passage of the Lord Desborough Lodge petition, the Martin Lodge, number 3202, was consecrated before the lower numbered Lord Desborough Lodge. And it seems very likely that apart from members of the royal family or those who have held the rank of Provincial Grand Master or above, Lord Desborough is the only individual to have 2 lodges named in his honour. That is, the Grenfell Lodge, number 3077, and the Lord Desborough Lodge, number 3200. And I personally think it's unfortunate that Grenfell Lodge has been renamed the Buckinghamshire Emergency Services Lodge. Just as a matter of interest, the Lord Desborough Past Masters jewel bears the coat of arms which was granted to Lord Desborough on his baronetcy, and which is the Grenfell arms amended by the addition of a pierced coronet and bar. This is different to his personal arms displayed on the Founder's jewel, which show the Grenfell arms impaled or joined with those of his wife, and you can find examples of these in the museum. But let's have a go back to the 1908 Games. In many respects, moving the 1908 Games to London was the ideal solution to the problem caused by Vesuvius. England had much more collective experience in organising large sporting events than any other country. The overall organisation of the 1908 Olympics was impeccable and included many innovations. They were the first Olympic Games we would recognise as being similar to the spectacle we enjoy today. For the first time, all athletes had to have been nominated and represent their respective country. The system of using qualifying standards and preliminary competition was introduced and has been followed ever since. They were even the first to have an opening ceremony. The presentation of prize medals and the issue of a commemorative medallion to all participants were a further innovation. It's worth noting, as you can see here, that these medals, which Lord Desborough had designed, feature Apollo in his chariot, a symbol of his mother lodge. The organising committee were fortunate that a large Franco-British exhibition was being held in 1908, and a site had been chosen at Wood Lane near Shepherd's Bush. Because of the building materials used, this site became known as the White City. Then the organisers of the Franco-British exhibition constructed at their own cost the stadium and all the associated facilities needed for running the Olympic Games. Ultimately, the White City Stadium, as you can see here, contained a running track, a cycle track, and a swimming and diving pool. It may, however, have helped that one of the key moving forces behind the Franco-British exhibition and the developer of the White City site was a certain Worshell brother Imrie Calfrey, a past Grand Deacon. Now, there are a large number of influential Freemasons involved in the 1908 Games. King Edward VII, who, as Prince of Wales, had been Grand Master of UGLE, along with Lord Ampthill, provided much support in putting together the Olympic bid and making that bid work. The opening ceremony, including the parade of athletes and the order in which they entered, was devised and organised by Worshell brother John Kynaston Studd, a past Grand Director of Ceremonies and future Provincial Grand Master of Cambridgeshire. The King and Queen attended the opening ceremony and were received by Viscount Selby, past Grand Warden, and Sir John Coburn, past Grand Deacon. Other Grand Officers were also members of the organising committee. And quite by accident, the now accepted distance for the marathon was also established in 1908. The original course was 42 kilometres, or 26 miles, 172 yards long, and it was set out by members of the Polytechnic Lodge number 2847. But the starting line was moved on the day by 213 yards from its original location to underneath the nursery window at Windsor Castle in order to give the royal family a better view. The resulting distance of 26 miles, 385 yards, or 42.195 kilometres, was internationally accepted as a standard marathon distance from the 1924 Games held in Paris. Now, the marathon ended in a spectacular fashion when Dorando Pietri of Italy collapsed after entering the stadium ahead of all the other runners. He was revived by doctors, and some of the officials helped him to the finish line. And the individual seen on the extreme right of this picture is thought to have been Sir Worshell brother Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes novels. Pietri was disqualified, but only after officials had argued for an hour and fights had broken out in the stands. But finally, in a speech at the closing banquet of the 1908 Games, William Hayes Fisher, future Lord Downham and a member of Fulham Lodge number 2512, said this of Lord Desborough: Well, I must say, you must search Great Britain all over, and you won't find any other man with a necessary combination of qualities as Lord Desborough. He is one of the two great pillars upon which the whole fabric of the Olympic movement in Great Britain is founded. And it's very difficult not to find Masonic significance in that. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Simon. Thank you.
Ken, thank you very much indeed. That was absolutely superb. And with only 17 days to go until the 2020 Olympics happen in Tokyo, it's completely important to understand that what we have now was created not in some international committee in Switzerland, but in our very own backyard. We now turn to the interview slot. This is where we have a conversation with a prominent Freemason within Berkshire. Prominent doesn't always mean high-ranking, although, of course, it's fair to say that our guest is this evening. But it gives somebody an opportunity to share their thoughts and answer questions, and gives you the chance to answer questions. And don't forget that question and answer button and those poor people in Abingdon who are toiling away even as we speak. This evening, I am absolutely delighted to welcome Ian Hopgood, the Grand Superintendent of the Holy Royal Arch in Berkshire. Ian and I have known one another for many, many years. Of course, more importantly than anything, Ian is the newly elected Master-elect of the Berkshire Lodge of Enlightenment. Ian, we can't hear you, you're on mute.
Good evening, Simon.
Good evening. So, Ian, why did you become a Mason?
Well, actually, Simon, it was decided for me. I think I was in my final year of my electronics apprenticeship at the Atomic Energy Research Establishment at Harwell, where my awards for Apprentice of the Year had already elevated my profile there. Uncle Alan, or should I say Brother Uncle Alan, had always taken a keen interest in my professional progress, and he suggested that I should join Freemasonry. Apparently, there were already many Freemasons at Harwell, and I'd be in good company. Well, as you can imagine, at the age of 21, I had far more interesting things on my mind than black suits and briefcases. However, my grandfather, from whom I get my unusual middle name Given, was also a Freemason. And he said, "Ian, it's time you join the Masons." Well, I had huge respect for my grandfather, and I just couldn't say no to anything he suggested. So subsequently, I was proposed into the Ashdown Lodge, number 8,592. But with several Lewises already ahead of me in the queue, I had to wait nearly 2 years before I was initiated in September 1987. For the first couple of years, I wasn't really sure Masonry was for me, but I did enjoy the monthly social catch-ups with my family members. I then worked through all the offices, and I became Master in January 1998.
You've mentioned Brother Uncle Alan, you've mentioned Brother Grandfather, and yourself. Are there any other Hopgoods who are Masons?
Yes, there are. In fact, there were 7 members of the Hopgood family at my initiation, and together we were very proud to have 3 active generations, not just in Masonry, but in the same lodge. My grandfather Given, my father Richard, and 4 uncles, Ben, Alan, Keith and Malcolm, were already members of the Ashdown Lodge who meet in Farringdon. Plus, I have 1 uncle, Winston, who is a Mason in Nottingham. All 7 were present at my initiation and also at my installation as Worshipful Master. And I believe you've got a photo there of my installation in 1998.
You're so young. You're so young, Ian.
Sadly, since that day, my grandfather and 1 uncle have risen to the Grand Lodge above. But my younger brother Bob and 2 close cousins have also become Freemasons. And you might also be interested to know that my Auntie Frances, who is Winston's wife, is also a lady Freemason. I think we might have a photo of her too.
Ah, there's Auntie Frances, yes.
Brother uncle and brother aunt.
Yes. we know you're a craft Mason, of course, and we know you're Grand Superintendent of the Royal Arch. But what other orders are you in?
Well, aside from the craft and the Holy Royal Arch, I'm also a member in 4 other orders in Freemasonry. In my early Masonic years, I was lucky enough to work with a senior Mason from Wiltshire, whose name was Michael Smith. and he helped me to focus on my own Masonic pathway. He advised me that while some may join several lodges or chapters, others would limit their membership to just one lodge and one chapter, so that they had more time to explore the other orders. I read a very enlightening book titled Beyond the Craft by Keith Jackson, which gives an introduction to several orders in Freemasonry. And from that, I decided I wanted to explore. Subsequently, after my 4-year stretch as provincial ADC and deputy DC, I joined Mark Masonry in Wantage, Knights Templar in Newbury, and Rose Choir in Wallingford, all in the same year. And I love the additional lessons which the ritual from each order have to offer. But I also enjoy supporting the different Masonic centres in the province, and also practicing some of my Freemasonry with different circles of people. Most recently, I also joined the Order of Royal and Select Masters, which binds together the craft, the mark, and the Holy Royal Arch to a cohesive meaning. And I look forward to progressing in that order.
How did your membership of those other degrees work and connect with you being Grand Superintendent of the Royal Arch?
Well, firstly, the Holy Royal Arch is my favourite and most enjoyable order in Freemasonry. So it's no surprise, really, that the fruits of my labour have earned me such progression in this order. And I'm honoured that the Royal Arch has selected me as Grand Superintendent for this wonderful province of Berkshire. However, being a Royal Arch companion is a necessary qualification for entry into several other Masonic orders, specifically Knights Templar and Royal and Select Masters.
Oh, that's me. This is the trouble, you see. I'm not used to doing this as a judge. I don't do it this way. You see, it's spontaneous by cross-examination. How does your Freemasonry link with your hobbies and interests?
Well, as far as interests go, since my early childhood, I've always been interested in personal development and growth. You know, when I was 10 years old, I used to climb the same tree across the road in different ways, just to see what I could learn from each route. While schools, clubs and universities and even profession are all brilliant to develop physical and professional capabilities and qualities, I find that Freemasonry provides me with a great platform for a more spiritual and moral development. For example, my favourite piece of craft ritual comes from the address to the wardens at installation. What you observe praiseworthy in others, you should carefully imitate, and what in them may appear defective, you should in yourselves amend. And I think they're extremely powerful words for reflection on ourselves. Similarly, from the Royal Arch, actively seeking an opportunity to offer assistance, no matter how menial, can deliver great satisfaction and reward. And one I've chosen from the Mark degree, belief in yourself that your skills will be required when the time is right. And also that the answer you seek is not always found by following the others around you. And brethren, there's many more, too many to give you this evening. As far as hobbies go, well, many will already know that I'm a keen motorcyclist and founder of the Thames Valley Motorcycle Lodge. This brings together like-minded people who enjoy masonry and motorbikes and our monthly social ride-outs around the country. In fact, several members have travelled with me to Spain on more than one occasion to enjoy motorcycle tours together in the sunshine. As motorcyclists, we have a special affinity with two wheels, and we've pledged significant charity money to support the Berkshire Blood Bikes. Brethren, I'd like to share a wonderful memory I have of masonry and motorcycling. I was visiting the Provincial Grand Chapter Convocation of Guernsey and Alderney in my role as Grand Superintendent, and I took Jane with me to make a weekend of it. Jane dined at the hotel while I attended the meeting and was looked after by the hotel manager, Rob Steen, who is also a Freemason. To my complete surprise, the next morning after breakfast, Rob escorted both of us to the foyer of the hotel, where his Harley-Davidson motorcycle was waiting for us, with 2 sets of gear, so Jane and I could explore the island. A hugely generous act of brotherly love, and he made me laugh when I asked for the keys so that we could lock the bike up when we stopped, He said, "Why do you need the keys? Who's going to nick it? You're on an island."
Oh, you'd be surprised. Now, Ian, I asked you to become a founder member of Berkshire Lodge of Entitlement. Why did you say yes?
Well, for many years, I was an active member of the Berkshire Masonic Education Committee, which was the forerunner to the Learning and Development Committee. And that's where I experienced firsthand the true benefit of education to our members across the province. It was hugely satisfying to see our work help to develop our brethren, both on a personal level as well as on a Masonic level. And I believe learning and development are key to maximise our enjoyment of Freemasonry. And the Berkshire Lodge of Enlightenment is a fabulous platform to deliver that focus. So I was delighted to become a founder, but I have to say the Office of Worshipful Master has come around much quicker than I expected.
Just when I expected, though, having said that. Now, what do you think will be the highlight of your year as master of this wonderful lodge?
Well, this lodge has already established a strong foothold with its educational meetings. And this e-magazine opportunity is creating a fabulous new dimension for learning and development. For me, as master of this lodge, but also with my Grand Superintendent's hat on, I'm delighted that we will consecrate a brand new Royal Arch chapter attached to this lodge on Friday, the 1st of October. It will be the first chapter consecration in this province for more than 27 years. The Berkshire Chapter of Enlightenment will extend the learning and education remit already made successful by this lodge to the members of the Holy Royal Arch in this province. It will be a hugely memorable occasion, both for me as the consecrating officer, but also for the province, and not least because of the founding principles. As Zerubbabel, or first principle, we have excellent companion Anthony Howlett Bolton, our provincial Grand Master. As Haggai, or second principle, we have excellent companion Ian Clark, our current Worshipful Master of the Berkshire Lodge of Enlightenment. And as Joshua, or third principle, we have excellent companion Steve Hickey, who is the Royal Arch Provincial Grand Director of Ceremonies. And Simon and I have every confidence that Friday the 1st of October will be a hugely popular occasion.
Well, Ian, I totally agree. Thank you very much indeed for spending time and joining us this evening and answering the questions. I'm sure the brethren have some questions and they are using the question and answer session, because I've seen at least one go into the inbox on my new whatever they're called, iPad-y thing. But thank you very much. So that's Friday the 1st of October, is it? Just remind ourselves. We might as well plug it. Yeah.
Yes, it is, Simon. And
Brilliant.
I would just like to say thank you to you and the whole e-magazine team for inviting me to this session. And thank you, brethren, for attending in such great numbers. As a minimum, I hope you found it interesting, but I also hope that it might stimulate your own growth and development ideas. Thank you.
And particularly joining the Royal Arch, I presume.
Of course, of course.
So which is what that logo is, top left, I think.
It is indeed. Yes, it is indeed.
Ian, thank you so much. That's very, very enjoyable. Thank you for answering those questions.
Thank you.
Brethren, we now turn to Brother Ian Freeth for his brief dip into what is new, interesting and exciting in Solomon. We've managed to drag him away from the hard-working team of answers of questions in Abingdon to tell us what's new. Ian.
Thank you, Simon. What I'm going to do, brethren, and good evening, as mentioned in the first edition, I'm going to sort of take you through some items in Solomon. So I will be sharing the screen, which I hope you'll be able to see. Now, what we've always looked at, particularly with the first edition, is that Solomon will form a regular part, a regular feature, and it will actually have either something which is quite significant, or it will actually be something to support the features that we've looked at in terms of this evening. Now, some of those significant things, some of you may be aware that Solomon recently launched its onboarding for each of the 3 degrees. And so, you know, there may be that to talk about, because I believe soon they'll be launching one for the Royal Arch. So Ian might be interested in that one. But also there may be something of significant content that we'd like you to put you into, you know, point you to within its content. In this edition, I'm really just going to focus on what we've covered in this evening's features. And again, it was really interesting to hear John's viewpoint on speculation in his discussions with Dean. As we heard from Ken, Lord Desborough, a Freemason, played obviously a significant role in the development of modern day Olympics. And you may be thinking, well, what could there be in Solomon to consider that? So I thought, why not go and use the search function in Solomon to see what is available and what was discussed tonight. So, brethren, I'm now going to sort of share my screen. So I'm hoping you'll be able to sort of see the details there. Can I get a nod from somebody to say they can see it? Thank you very much. That's wonderful. So as you can see there, that's the sort of homepage that you come to. And if I were to just type in the word speculation, let's say, because that was the basis of the discussion between Dean and John. So in good old Blue Peter style, there we go. And click on search. You'll find there's nothing there. Now, that may be strange. Solomon doesn't have anything on speculation. Well, part of that is, and this is one of the important things to think about, and this is the caveat that we need to understand with Solomon. It's not a website or a generic search engine, but rather a computer system that uses web technology. So you can only search on the content within the modules you're enrolled in. But don't worry, I'm going to show you other areas if you're not, so you can look at and track down information that may be of, particular information to yourselves. So this particular aspect of module enrollment, I can demonstrate by first accessing Solomon without logging in, which is what I've just done there. And that's generally seen as a guest. But what I'll do now is if I log in myself, it's obviously remember the search I've just put in, because it's now showing me, as you can see there. And what I'll do, so you can possibly see better, brethren, is zoom in and you can see there's elements on operative Freemasons. And as you can see just here, there's a word, speculation, which is highlighted. So it may be a good point for us to actually go to that particular section. And that actually brings us, and it's taken me to the section where it's talking about speculation. We've got elements about operative and medieval Freemasonry, or Masonry, should I say, because it's the operative form. And that takes you through the different documents. So there's quite a lot there, brethren, in terms of information that's associated with it. And as you can see, we come down to another section, which is speculative Freemasonry. Now, obviously, when you've got a lot of content on screen like this, I'm not sure if you're aware, but you can actually use search functionality by simultaneously holding down the Control and F button. And that will allow you, I get on there we go. So a little button opens there and you can type in speculation. And as you can see, it's already highlighting something within Solomon that refers to that. But what we've got to remember is that's only one word. What we need to understand is what else could that relate to? And this is one of the things with any type of search, brethren, is that sometimes you have to think about the words that you're using to help you find the content that you want to consider. So by looking at speculative Freemasonry, different word, similar sort of thing, you'd obviously be able to track that information. And as we go down, you can see a whole series of articles in terms of different viewpoints within speculative Freemasonry. And again, because this is under history, we can look at different elements associated with the aprons, the ritual, and oh, what do I see there? Some famous Freemasons. What a coincidence, as we were discussing a famous Freemason a little bit earlier. But if I scroll down, dare I say, Ken, there's somebody missing as a famous Freemason. Who could that be? It's Lord Desborough. I think that's something within Solomon that perhaps needs to be, perhaps your wonderful talk could be put as a document within there. So looking at that, brethren, it gives you something using the search functionality for the modules that you're within can actually help you find the different content that's there. But as I said earlier, if you're not actually in a particular module, but you want to have a scan around, if you go right to the top at the home, you'll see this little thing here called the breadcrumbs. which I'm sort of highlighting with my cursor. If you just click on home, then that takes you back. Now, if you can remember, we were in Seek and Learn. So if I click on that, and that's generally the one that you're more likely to want to access to find content that's relevant to anything associated with ritual. So clicking on that takes you a couple of videos explaining what Solomon does. Oh, look, there's some of the onboarding, the modules that I mentioned earlier for entered apprentices, fellow crafts. There's the one for the Master Masons. And there you go, Ian. Coming soon, onboarding for companions. Thought I'd drop that one in for you. But we come down to Masonic history. If I click on that, look, we're back to where we were before. So we're looking through, there we are, operative and medieval masonry. So it's there. It's sometimes like anything, it's being able to navigate. Now, you may have noticed next to Seek and Learn Masonic history, just like every good organization that have their box sets, so does Solomon. And if we click on that, then there you go. Famous Freemasons that you're looking for, all downloadable in one easy document that you can while away those winter nights understanding who was there before. So it's important that we can see what's there. So hopefully that little snippet, which we will be doing sometimes with Solomon, gives you an idea of what you can access, how you can access. So brethren, I hope you found that useful, and I'll now hand you back to Simon, because apparently I've got other duties to do.
Yes, well, Ian, thank you very much indeed. That was phenomenal. I always enjoy the way that you make accessing Solomon so easy and look so straightforward. I think it is. It's just that people like me who are Luddites find it difficult. So the more practice we can see how you do it, the better. Now we move on to the question and answer session. If I call in the people who have spoken this evening, I then call in Abingdon. Abingdon, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
This is Wokingham calling. Can we have your votes, please? Or can we have your questions, please? Oh, it's you again.
It's me. What a surprise.
Yes.
So I've got an answer, quite an interesting one for Ian Hopgood. So could Ian explain the origins of the Holy Royal Arch as an order in Freemasonry?
Well, I saw that question pop up, and I wonder if the person who asked it, Brian Page, has any insight to the installation of me as master at the Berkshire Lodge of Enlightenment. The Holy Royal Arch has a checkered past, really, before the union of the two Grand Lodges, the ancients and the moderns. And I will be presenting a paper at my installation as master at the Berkshire Lodge of Enlightenment on Saturday, the 24th of July. So, and it's titled An Ancient Perspective of Holy Royal Arch. So I'm reluctant to give any answer at this point because it would spoil things for the Lodge of Enlightenment installation meeting. But Brian, please come along and listen up.
So that's Saturday, the 24th of July for the
Yes,
installation. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, am I allowed to come in? Sorry, didn't want to interrupt you there, Simon.
Ian, no, I'm coming back to you.
Okay. I did get another question through from a different channel. So this is one for John Avery. Hopefully it's not going to be too much of an issue for him to go through. Besides the pencil that you use to illustrate, could there be other examples that could be used to help Masons understand speculation? Because you indicated a little bit that it may not be relevant to some or others, and you talked about that for yourself. Over to you, John.
Yes. Okay. Am I on vision? I can't see myself.
Yes, you are. You're there.
Okay. Yes. The example I used was one that I thought up many years ago and included in a paper that I wrote on speculation in general. The answer to your question really is that all of our symbolism has more than one meaning. And each of the meanings that you assign to whatever symbol or symbolic part of Masonry is, you have to remember that you are looking at it really through a lens that is your own experiences. So it's something I look at and see that's relevant to me may not be relevant to you if you haven't had the same experiences that I have. And this applies to everybody in a lodge, which is why when you see a ceremony being performed, you may get something different from it than the brother who sits next to you. Does this make any sense?
Yep, I think it does. And add that to what you were talking about before in your discussions with Dean. I think that sort of helps illustrate it a little bit further.
Ian, can I just make a comment there also about Solomon, because on Solomon he's made very clear that any interpretation of any ritual or symbolism is very speculative, and it's not a right answer. It's not an approved answer of UGLE or indeed any other Masonic body. It's just something that someone's put forward at some point that's tended to become accepted.
Okay, thanks for that, Ken. Yeah.
Can I add something to that? You're often asked, what does Grand Lodge think about this piece of ritual? Well, Grand Lodge have always kept away from making any comments at all about our ritual. They just don't mention anything. They leave it to you to see what you want to in the ritual, and they don't comment on it.
Okay, thanks for that.
Ian, I see that we've got 2 more questions in the box. Perhaps we should look at those, and then we probably ought to stop, because otherwise we'll be here and you won't be able to get your beauty sleep, which I know you need so
and that's
much.
quite important. I've got face masks ready to sort of cool the heat down of the excitement of tonight's evening. So there's a couple come through, and I think the one from Liam and Owen is very much, I think Liam's was covered with Ian Hopgood's response with, obviously we're going to have the installation meeting is obviously on Saturday, July the 24th, just to repeat that again. Yeah. And obviously he's going to give his paper there. We may have touched on before about visiting other centres in the province. And obviously, I think those aren't we invited as guests, possibly, Simon?
Well, we try to alternate between East and West. This is what we were doing pre-pandemic. And I think our last visit was out West. So our next visit should be out East. But we try to go to different centres. We've been to Wokingham, we've been to Windsor. So we were aiming to go to Maidenhead, I think, but that sort of got stuck with the pandemic. And there's no prerequisite. It's just if a centre would like us, if they wanted or Wallingford want to have us, we're happy to come. And we'd like to have the lodges that are in the centre to join us.
And of course, we'd like to move north towards Abingdon as well, I'm sure.
Ooh, that's a town too far.
Just one last question, I think, brethren, because time is moving on. And this is just for Ken. Obviously, you mentioned that there's a couple of lodges with various names after Lord Desborough. Are there any others that are named after famous people within the province itself in Berkshire? Ken, do you know?
The other lodges that tend to have the names of individuals are named after either provincial Grand Masters or deputies, provincial Grand Masters.
Okay.
There is the Wellesley Lodge, though.
There's the Wellesley Lodge, yeah. But other than that, no, I don't think so. No, as I say, the other ones bearing names are basically provincial Grand Masters, or the Martin Lodge is he was the deputy provincial Grand Master.
Okay.
At the start of the 20th century.
Okay, thanks for that, Ken. I think just a last minute before you sort of go into conclusion, Simon, is just to remind people that if there's any articles that you want us to cover, please obviously email in and let us know any areas of interest that could be with you. Okay, I think that's it for questions and answers. So back over to you, Simon.
Thank you. Yes, we've now got the 2 conundra. The master sets a conundrum, but because nobody won it last time, we have 2, and they are, I hope, going to appear on the screen. The first one is describe the 4 types of brethren whom Pierre encountered when he joined a Masonic lodge. Now, we were going to give you a hint on this, but I can't remember what the hint was, unless it's from War and Peace, but I'm not sure that it is, because Pierre Bezukhov was a Mason and it does feature in War and Peace. So, Ian Clark, is there a hint we can give people as to what this might be?
I think you've just done it, Simon.
All right, thank you. War, got to read War and Peace.
Not only that, a Google search, other search engines are available, will very rapidly provide the answers to this one.
Oh, I thought everyone should read the whole of War and Peace. It's a great book. It took me 2 years. So that's question 1, brethren. Google War and Peace. Now this one. What is the response to the question, since you bring nothing but hearty good wishes, what do you come here to do? Now, brethren, this is something you may not have ever come across. But if I said there was a green book which had some lectures in, and if you started to look at something called the first lecture, you might begin to find the answer to it. So that's your hint. The first lecture in the green book. You didn't know there was a green book, but there is. Very well worth reading, the lectures, brethren, and we will come back to them, I'm sure, in the future. So there we are. Those are the 2 conundra. I hope that you've enjoyed this evening. I hope that you've found it worthwhile and that you've learned something and had some benefit from what we've shown you today and spoken about. I've certainly learned a lot. You will be getting a questionnaire to fill in, so please fill it in. We want your feedback, brethren, please. And you'll also be given or sent an invitation to our next edition, which is in September. And we'll also give you more details about the events we've covered this evening. Can I thank Ian Hopgood, the Grand Superintendent? Can I thank Ken Wootton, Dean Reed and John Avery for their contributions? Can I thank the editorial and support team, particularly Ian Freeth and his bevy of staff in Abingdon and John McGregor, who made all of this possible with the skill and technology. But can I thank you for joining us, brethren? The next meeting we're going to have will be in September, when we're going to be focusing on beginnings. And we're looking at early Masonry in Berkshire. And in November, given that it's a Remembrance Sunday and that kind of thing, we're looking at Freemasonry and the military. Brethren, thank you once again for your time and your participation. Please fill in the feedback so we know what you would like us to do in the future. And I leave you with the conundra on the screen. And good night.